Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Over to you then, Mark.
Yeah, well, thank you, everybody. And yeah, the tables have been turned, as they say. Gamekeeper turned poacher here. Well, anyway, today's very much about an introduction to indoor duration. I note from the participants list we've got a real good mixture of folks in today, some with experience, some without. This is aimed very much about introducing those who fly indoors but possibly haven't sort of dabbled with durations. So I'm going to try and take everybody through a simple presentation at the moment. Then we'll we'll get rid of the presentation and we'll do a little bit of freestyling and a little bit of question and answer session. Indoor duration introduction. Well, let's try and start off. Let's see if the presentation works. Here we go. Well, me to start off with, just as an introduction, I come from a free flight background. Started in the 1970s. This little urchin here with an A1 glider designed by Martin Dilley in the 1970s, being my first model. I think I'm aged 12 there, and a good buddy of mine, Peter Gibbons, who still flying today with his half-A power model. Yeah, this one. The next photo here, this actually came from the 1980s, and somebody introduced me to this. I hadn't actually seen this up until about three or 4 weeks ago, and this was Cardington Capers. It was a regular article in the Aero Modeler, and I'm holding what was my first ever indoor duration style model. It's a Frankenstein model, don't worry about it, but it was when I was flying hand launch gliders in the 80s. And then during the mid-noughties, I became a lot more serious, as in the face here. You know, you can see I'm really concentrating there. This is at World Championships, launching one of my F1D models. So, you know, I spanned from the 70s through to today. Why duration? Well, there's been an awful lot said about duration. It's described gossamer-like. The word gossamer has been used an awful lot. You know, these are the wings of a wasp or a bee, not dissimilar to what we do. It's ballet, it's graceful. Sorry, I shouldn't have left the pointer there. That was Freudian slip there. But anyway, you know, it is very graceful, and we enjoy it that way. And this is what we fly. And what really kicks off for a lot of us, it's an extreme sport. You know, we've seen over the last few weeks a lot of people talking about their extreme sports, whether it's fast, whether it's a model that actually turns on a knife point, but we fly incredibly slowly. We fly for maximum duration. These models, you can't run around with them. You have to walk incredibly slowly with them. We build them all ourselves, and I'll come on to that later on. But that's one of the things that certainly for me kicks it. The guys who are on the panel today, this is similar for them as well. Just a little bit of history. Indoor duration goes back, I believe, to the 1930s, even 20s. There's some amazing models that I've seen flying in different countries. I've just shown a picture here, and I can't tell you who that is. Somebody will tell me, I'm sure, before the evening's out. Middle one, quite interesting. This is my mentor, Bob Bailey. I'll come back onto mentoring later. And this was Bob in the 1970s, and a really good buddy of mine, Geoffrey Lefevre, also in the 1970s. And they're flying F1D models. They're both, and they're the old style F1D models. So indoor duration classes, there are an awful lot of these. Again, a thread that we had on a previous talk, somebody was saying, are there too many classes? That's open for debate. I'm not going to go there today. But what I want to do is introduce you to some of the more common classes and the ones that we fly here. Again, Bob Bailey with open rubber class. This is this is unlimited. These models are just immense, and I know we've got a couple of guys in the audience. Josh, one of them, and he's built a number of these models, and they fly for, you know, in excess of an hour. Simon Bardry with a limited penny plane, one of our most common and popular classes, very simple to build, very difficult to fly. in terms of getting the real good duration out of them, but lots of fun. Simon's face really says it all there, really. And then in the background, we've got a Jiminy Cricket, which is a Mike Colling BMFA creature. And then we've got in the foreground, we've got an Easy B, otherwise known as an F1L, which is the international classification for it. They're very, very similar. There's actually two classes there, but I think for the sake of what we're talking about today, it's called an Easy B. Living room stick. Yes, that living room stick is upside down, and it's probably one of mine because mine likes going upside down. They're a crazy little model. Living room stick. It's, as it says on the packet, really, these are tiny little models, and you can fly them in your living room, although better in high ceiling. They go like Billy-O, and yeah, cartwheeling a lot, but really, really good fun models. The late Laurie Barr. He's got an F1M in his hand here. This is in Cardington. Where else? This is his home. I think he more or less lived there for the best part of 30 years. Yeah, just a great character, and he's got an F1M there. F1M is the beginner's class for F1D. It was designed as that, but like all of these beginners classes in all of the type of flying that we do, once you put it in the arms and the hands of a master, he will always beat you. And then a most wonderful and very popular class, 35 centimeter F1R is the classification for it, and that's again Bob Bailey there with an F1R, and I'll come back onto that. But that one weighs around about 0.37 grams minus the rubber. So you know, have a think about that. That's not very heavy, that one, but an incredibly light model and good fun to fly. Nightmare to build. And then for those of you in the room who like a little bit of scale, we've got NoCal. It's a profile scale class, and you've got Tim on the left there with his. I think that's a cassette, but I'm not. I maybe should not. Yeah, it is. I can see somebody nodding there. It's a cassette, and then the late Clive King with a condenser covered model as well. And I know Clive was superb at NoCal. Used to get these flying for about 5 or 6 minutes, I believe, in a small sports hall. He was pretty impressive with that. So I put that one in. We'd enjoy that. So further, there is even more duration classes. Myself and Mick Page in Cardington, going back into the late 80s, just after my boy phase of the previous photograph that you saw. We're launching catapults there, and we look. You know, those are going 150 feet up into the air, those small catapult models, and they glide for in excess of well over a minute. Absolutely fantastic fun, and we used to spend an awful lot of time in Cardington flying. Hand launch glider F1N. You know, a great gathering there of a lot of the great hand launch glider flyers of the 80s and 90s, and even before that. And there was a gathering there at the University of Idaho at the Kibbe Dome, and that was back in 2005. And yeah, absolutely fantastic time. But there's hand launch glider, which is another one of falls into the indoor duration categories. And then we come on to F1D. We're going to expand a little bit on F1D just to give you a little bit more flavour of what it's all about. But there's two models there. One's mine, and I believe the other one is probably Tony Hebb's there. It looks like Tony's the one in the distance. And we're flying in a salt cellar in Balby. You know, that's where they store salt for salting the roads. Although this one was used as a sports gymnasium. Right, I said before it's an extreme sport. An F1D indoor duration model, it spans just over 0.5 metre, and fully wound, so that's with its motor, it weighs the same as 2 £10 notes. So the next time you pull out a £10 note to pay somebody, just feel that and actually think about it. It is quite impressive, and it's just really, it's a nice way of looking at it. So that's 1.4 grams. So, you know, that's the sort of thing that we're talking about there. We build our own models, which is really important to me. I like to build models. You know, you can't purchase an F1D. there's only one component you're allowed to purchase, which we'll come on to if we talk about that later. We fly in enclosed spaces without control. It's a free flight model. There's no control, which for me, I love free flight, always have done. And flying with walls surrounding you is just another challenge for that, and actually a ceiling as well, which is actually probably more worrying than the walls. Walls are far less of a problem. Flying upwards of 25 minutes from point, from a motor, from a small piece of rubber, which we'll show you. Rubber's weighing 0.4 grams, less than half of the £10 note. So again, just giving you an idea, and I'll show you what those motors actually look like when we get off the PowerPoint presentation, just to give you a flavour of that. So F1D again, this is one of my models flying in Cardington back in about 2008, I think it was. We went through a phase of elliptical style wings, so we were building these on a curved platform, curved template, 18-inch propeller, which was variable pitched as well. And again, I've got a box of toys here, which I'll show you afterwards, after the presentation. Again, we've covered this on the span of the model. It's quite interesting to see. There's a couple of models flying here. We fly in all different types of buildings, which you'll come on to. Variable pitch propeller. This is it in this corner here. Not the easiest thing to see, but it weighs 90 milligrams. Just to give you an idea, 90 milligrams is, it's ridiculously light. It has 3 functions on it, and it's the thing that allows us to fly in lower ceilings. So these models here rely wholly on this variable pitch, changing the pitch of the propeller to allow us to control the height of the model and the duration. Commonly an F1D will fly 200 feet. That's not a problem. You can do that, but if you're flying in a 30-foot or a 40-foot, even a 60-foot building, you're going to have to control the height, and I'll come on to that later. Where do we fly today? Well, in Europe, there is really one main venue that we fly in at the moment, which is the salt mine in Slanik in Romania. It's the next 2021, this year's F1D World Championships in December. And it's below ground. It's a long way below ground. You drive down for half an hour, spiraling down some rather fun salt roads, and you end up in this cavern. It's almost impossible to describe. The guys will probably talk to you about it. Hans and Tony are, in the room with us. It's an amazing place to fly. The picture on the left, I believe, is in the taller of the 2 mines. So the one mine on the right, the photograph on the far right, is beneath the mine on the left, and that's the key to it. It's they're different heights, 200 feet on the one on the left, 180 to 200 feet, and then the other one is about 140 feet, 130 feet, I think. So just amazing spaces, and we're very thankful that we can go and fly there in wonderful Romania. In the USA recently, on the left you've got the Kibbe Dome. I believe it's changed very slightly. The end wall is not all glass now, but I may be wrong. But that's the Kibbe Dome there, and I've flown there a couple of times and would love to go back. And then on the right is West Baden Hotel, where we flew the last World Championships. And again, that's a massive atria inside of a hotel, and a wonderful place to fly. Unfortunately, air conditions were not conducive to good duration, but then that's another story. And then for the UK, well, in the UK, we're not blessed with high ceiling sites at the moment. Whilst we've spoken about Cardington is not available at the moment. We are constantly trying to get in there, but there's always more money being thrown about to get other people in there. On the left here, Tony flying an F1D in one of our sports halls in Peterborough. That's a 26, 27 foot ceiling. We're flying there, and you can see from his model he's using the propeller, a lot of pitch in the propeller. The wing has got a lot of wash in the inboard wing, which is the left wing, and it's really It's really on some high torque. The model does contort and twist quite a lot at high torque. Middle, we're looking at another, this RF Digby, I believe, if I remember rightly off the top of my head. It might actually, yeah, it might be Digby. But again, Tony flying an F1L and advertising a Coke bottle there. I think we're having a bit of fun with him there. And then on the far right, that was RF Shawbury, and that was one of our nationals that we held there. And a couple of the guys launching a couple of penny planes by the look of it. But again, different venues, usually under 30 feet, 32 feet, something of that ilk is what we commonly fly in. Materials, it's a stick and tissue model, and I think this is one of the things that we all get off on. Here's David Bowie from, I think, the 1970s, and he's got a stick and tissue model in his hand. It may be rubber powered, but, he was building that. He's even flying it with a cigarette in his mouth, fantastic. It's what we're doing. His hands in the salt mine. It's a stick and tissue model. When you look at it, it's balsa wood and it's covered in film. It might as well be covered in tissue. It's not dissimilar. It's not a complicated build. It's one of being methodical and careful. And a couple of our buddies from Ireland. We've got Dorothy and Rodney there from Ireland, and again, they're building lots of these penny planes and F1L models, EZB models, and if you look at them closely, they're all balsa wood. The majority of the model is balsa wood with a covering, so they're stick and tissue models. They are the basic form of models, and they haven't really changed from an early photograph back in the 1940s there that I showed you earlier. Materials, and I said on the intro, very on the flyer that we had for the talk, that I'd try and give 8 easy steps to improve, rubber model performance and duration. Well, I'm going to sort of throw some of these in, and again, we can discuss them later. Rubber motors, it is number one on the list. You don't want a bad piece of rubber, but more importantly, the most important thing is getting the right weight of rubber and the right thickness of rubber. You fly on a piece of rubber that's far too thick, your model flies too fast, too high, you can't control it. Getting the weight of rubber right is number one as my tip. Number two, really, to do with the rubber motors, is to make sure they're lubricated properly, and that's using a good quality and very simple silicone lubricant. You don't need to go much more than that. And when you fly these models with the right size rubber, they just fly properly. Now, it is reliant on rubber stripping, cutting the rubber down to size, and I appreciate not everybody has a rubber stripper, but you can buy some that's pre-cut. But flying a model that has massively oversized rubber or undersized rubber, the performance is going to be very, very limiting. Balsa wood. We've spoken. Balsa wood is everything in terms of the construction of the model. Now, you don't have to have the lightest balsa wood in the world. The most important thing is that the balsa wood is stiff, and it's really important that when you select your balsa wood, you don't build a model that is floppy just because you're desperate to get down to some weight. Look at the balsa wood carefully. If you're stripping down spars, strip down 10 or 15 spars and just compare one with another. And what you will find is that 2 or 3 of those, they're rubbish, and you can throw them away, and you'll find some that are stiffer. A stiffer model that's slightly overweight is far, far better than an underweight or a lightweight model that is flopping all over the place. So balsa wood is very, very important, and we've got some links later to where you can actually pick up indoor balsa wood apart from model shops. But of course, at the moment, model shops and balsa wood is a little bit tricky. So, but we have got a contact we'll throw in later on. Weight. Now, everybody worries about the weight of a model. You want to build something to 1.2 grams, 1.4 grams, whatever it may be. Weigh every component. Don't just weigh the whole model. Weigh every component. Consider your component weights. Very, very important. Put yourself together a simple spreadsheet, or even just on paper, writing down each component so that you know what your target weight is. It makes building very, very easy once you've done that. And it's something that all duration flyers just get into that habit. And these scales cost about £7 or £8. You can buy them off eBay, off the internet. Buy 2 or 3 sets of them and just use them. Understand the weight of what you're putting together. I commonly build an F1D wing, and it's got 2 ribs that are alike. And I'll cut 20 or 30 ribs and weigh them all, and they can vary. Some can be 3 times the weight of another out of the same sheet of wood. So again, weight and Bolsa selection is absolutely critical to improving, and it's something that's very, very simple to actually do. It doesn't cost you anything. Step 4 comes back to rubber again. How the torque of the motor. You wind a model, you wind the motor up. We all know you can buy expensive winders, and you can buy £10 those yellow plastic winders, which are superb as well. The important thing is that when you load your motor into the model, you know what the torque of the motor is. The torque can control the height, the speed of the model. Stops it going into the rafters, stops it hitting the wall, stops it breaking, folding, all of these things. Make yourself a torque meter. You can buy some of them. There are suppliers across the globe. Absolutely fundamental to understanding how a model will fly. One moment, please. Sorry, he did that. Martin Judge, one of our British team flyers there. That's a homemade stooge that he has there, and a homemade torque meter. Very simple to construct. It just means that he has consistency, so he can launch the model every single time on the same torque, and within a few feet it goes exactly to the same height, and he controls the model. Another very, very important thing is about the use of model is stretching the rubber. Don't just buy a virgin piece of rubber, tie a knot in it, wind it up and launch. You need to stretch the rubber. Stretch it till it almost breaks, hold it there for a couple of minutes, release it. There's a lot more energy in that rubber, and that's a fantastic tip. If you've never actually flown any duration models, stretch that rubber, let it rest for a little bit, and then wind it. There's far more energy in that same piece of rubber, and it's just looking after it. Behind me, I've got a fridge full of rubber. I always condition it, keep it out of sunlight. It's a natural material. The sunlight is not good to rubber, but look after your rubber and look after the winding of your rubber. And then, it's an obvious one, but talk to others, ask questions. The top photograph is 2 of the best Romanian flyers in the world. They're 2 of the best flyers in the world, Romanian guys, Cornell and Orel Popa. They are there. They are constantly talking about what they're going to do for their next flight. They are talking about what torque, what rubber they're using, how their models are set. They work as a team. The bottom one is a classic one. One of my buddies again, Jeff Lefevre, myself. This was in Bordeaux. We were flying in a velodrome there, and we're constantly talking to each other, understanding how to get more out of the model. Jeffrey showed me many ways, and I've got a tailplane here that I was going to show everybody. He showed me how to cover it many, many, many years ago. I was sort of 6 months in. Just listen and learn from people, and this goes across whatever discipline you're flying. 6, very, very important. Look after your models. These things are incredibly delicate, and if they get bruised and battered, they don't fly as well, and you get caught out all the time. This is a box by Deso Orsavai, who is an amazing Hungarian flyer. It's an immaculate box, but that's how he looks after his models. So again, we have different things. I've got a box full of propellers here. I keep them separate because I find them a little bit more, I find them safer in a separate box. But again, whether it's a cardboard box, make sure it's stiff enough, secure the model so it doesn't rattle about, look after it, and it will keep flying, and it will fly a lot better. And then the correct warps. Well, the warps and the trim of the model is incredibly important. Top photograph, we saw it earlier, but this is Deso with his model there. You can see his tail warp. He's got a little bit of downwash in his tail. Absolutely critical on that left side. You put that in, and most duration models will just fly. That is one of the trims that you always want to put in. And my buddy below, Derek Richards, he told me that from the first day I ever flew an F1D, we put that warp in and the model just flew. And he's actually setting the warps on his model there in the salt mine, back in, I think, around about 2007, I think it was, when they were up there. But again, the correct warps, it's a subject on its own, and maybe that's something we can look at, how to trim models at another session. But basically, set your wings up straight, a little bit of tail warp in, side thrust, and the model tends to fly. But we'll cover that in another session another time. And 8, absolutely essential. You must, whatever propeller you are using, you must set the blades to be equal. Set the pitch of them correct, as in whatever angle you want to set the propeller blades at, but make sure they're both equal. If one is slightly different, half a degree or a degree different, the model is fully out of sync. It will not fly brilliantly well, and performance is down, and you never know why. You can look at your model all day long and the stopwatch, you're looking at duration. Get your propellers set, understand your pitch angles, and it's a basic thing, and check them throughout the day. The lighter the model you use, the more you have to change it. Atmospherics, temperature will change the way in which propellers are set. Always check them. Bob Bailey always said to me, check it every flight, every contest flight. You know what the pitch of your propeller wants to be. Check it before you fly. Many a times I've been flying, I hadn't done that, and one of the blades was out, and the performance is down. So again, that's sort of the last sort of tip that I would put out there. Why titled this? Well, high flying and a stiff neck. We're often caught leaning back, looking. You're watching models. We used to fly for when I started, it was flying for 30-35 minutes. The rubber has been cut down now, so we're now flying for 25 minutes and higher. You go back even earlier, and the models were flying 40 odd minutes. And then Josh and Bob fly the larger open models, and they're flying for an hour. You do get a stiff neck. And then long duration often turns you to sleep. I thought I'd just throw that one in because my buddy always falls asleep after a long flight. But why do we do it? Well, we just love it. It's just something. It's the camaraderie. The photograph on the left. We're in a 4-foot square box in a lift. It's the most surreal experience in this lift. It's hewn out of salt, goes down on, well, I think it's just ropes. I'm not even sure there's any metal cables in there. It's a scary sort of exercise going down, and that's when the lights are on. Often we go down when it's pitch black in there, but we all go down and we just love it. We're all crammed in there. And then some of us love it because we win trophies and we can compete against the best. So that was and that's part of what we do, really. And I just thought I'd throw those two in there. I will put this up. We'll put this up on the website, but we've got obviously suppliers. We've got Green Man Bolsa in the UK, which is Nick Aikman. I've got his email address there. Free flight supplies through Mike Woodhouse. Mike sells OS film, various different other goodies that allow you to help build models. JH Aerospace over in the States, which is, we mentioned Joshua Finn earlier, and there's a photo of Josh flying one of his monster open models in Lakehurst in the States. Now, Joshua's got a lot of kits, he's got a lot of materials there, and he's got a wonderful set of YouTube videos and instructionals. And I'd applaud everybody to go and visit his site, and you'll learn a lot. And he's amazingly helpful and incredibly enthusiastic. Indoor free flight supplies, again, there's a website there. And then look at the BMFA Indoor Duration Tech Committee website. There's a massive amount of information on there. Tony Hans and Mike Colling and the rest of the team over the years have been putting lots of information on there. And there's a extensive list of contacts and suppliers. So again, we'll put that onto the website for everybody to be able to look at. Right, I'm going to stop sharing now. If you forgive me a moment, let's see if I can. Right, I'm back now. So a couple of things I wanted to show everybody, because it's never. These are some of the rubber motors we use. We spoke about what we do. I put them in little packets, but I just wanted to show everybody what a contest motor looks like in reality. That's what it is. So that's a contest motor that we use, and that will fly a model, an F1D, around about the 25-minute mark. And if we're having a good day, you can certainly get higher than that. And on a bad day, anything over 22 is fairly common with a motor of that weight. They're not very heavy. How do we wind them up? We use winder. This is a Petering winder. You can make them out of Meccano. I've seen them made out of Meccano. Very, very simple winders. Have a counter on top, and yeah, really beautiful piece of engineering. There are some now being made by the Hungarians are making them now, and they are for sale over the internet. And then I wanted to show everybody an F1D wing, which it's not one of my latest ones, so I'm not throwing it around in the. But it's something that has a life of its own. When it's not attached to the model, it really does. It just feels incredibly delicate, incredibly floppy. But as soon as you fix those two posts, this whole thing becomes a lot stiffer, a lot. And you can see the colours of it. That's the thickness of the mylar that you can see, the different micron thicknesses. Somebody who's far more intelligent than me will tell me the actual thicknesses due to the colour. They'll be able to know what it is. But this is covered in what we call OS film. It's commonly available. It's not a difficult film to use. I think most people will destroy the first couple of sheets that they use, but you get a roll of it and just enjoy it. Enjoy trying to use the material. A tailplane, I mentioned to you. Again, this is an F1D tailplane. It's stick and tissue. It's not that difficult to construct. The most difficult thing is actually handling them. It's actually got the film on it, and it's a lot easier to handle. Once the film's off, these things, they're very, very strange. But they, just build one. Follow some drawings. We can help anybody out with drawings, and lots of fun. I've got a model sitting here. This is a 35 centimeter model. This is just, let me try and put that right where the camera discombobulated there. This is a relatively heavyweight one. The lightweight ones that I got won't come out the box today because they weigh about 0.3, 0.4 grams. This one's 0.5, 0.6 grams. That additional weight makes it far stiffer. And this one has a fixed pitch propeller, so it's just a straightforward propeller. And these sort of models will fly. This would commonly fly for around about 12-15 minutes without a great deal of difficulty on a very small piece of rubber. Rubber weight would probably be 90% of the weight of the model, something in that magnitude. I mentioned before, these are my World Championship propellers in a box. Let me just take one out, see if I can show you what a VP propeller looks like. If I drop them on the floor, I might just have to lose the screen, and because I'll be cursing. But always put the lid back on the box when you take something out. People have been known to drop their glasses in when they're looking into a box. This is a VP propeller for an F1D model. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to alter just by putting a little bit of torque on. Hopefully you can see the propeller just moving a small amount to increase the pitch on that. And that mechanism there is weighing 90 milligrams. So all at weight of that propeller around about 130, sorry, I think it's, yeah, sorry, I can't remember what the weight is now. 200 and something. I'm being Tony will correct me on that. It's sorry, it's been a long COVID break. What else have we got to tell everybody about? I think, again, another thing that's really important about indoor duration models. Think about the glue that you use. This is not me in some sort of factory of making something horrible, but the glue that we use is something like ambroid. I've got a bottle there that's marked 50/50. There's no cellulose in that because I haven't actually put any in at the time or any acetone in it. But don't use neat glue. Thin your glue down. Glue is one of the heaviest components of an indoor duration model. Very, very important. Each one of those bottles has a slightly different dilution, as well as I've got 2 or 3 different types of silicone in there, just to play with different things. But it's just, again, it's not difficult to do. Simple tubes, put them in a case. That travels around the world with me then. And normally in the suitcase, don't take it on the airplane because it's got chemicals in it, and we get arrested for things like that. Yeah, I think we can. Have we got any questions? I think would be the next thing.
Just unmuting myself. Thanks for that. We must talk about dangerous cargo in airplanes outside of this. Thank you very much for that. That was very, very interesting. We've got 1 or 2 questions. First one came in was from Andrew Ellison. He says, I have over the years had many opportunities to timekeep at indoor events for the late John O'Donnell. John could bend a rule within an inch of its life, often just to prove that it was a silly rule anyway. Yeah, most of us that know John know that, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, knew John, sorry. What are the most outstanding examples of gamesmanship that you yourself have witnessed, perhaps especially on the international scene?
Yeah, it's one that John O'Donnell knew and exploited always correctly to the rules. It's to do with steering a model. So when a model, the rule states that when a model gets close or is going to be impacting with a wall or a ceiling, you have the opportunity of steering it. Now, if you're 160 feet up in the air, you can't use a pole to steer with, but we use mylar-filled balloons, helium balloons, with a long line on them. But if you're steering with a pole, or you're steering with a balloon, there are ways of trying to gain. So imagine if you've got a balloon and you catch a model that's 50 feet up, that balloon suddenly goes another 10, 20 feet up, and the model is then released. We have witnessed, usually by mistake. I don't always believe it's on purpose, but we have seen that. So that's one of the things that is most commonly used and pulled out. Similarly with the steering with a pole, and I think we've seen this as well. You're not allowed to change the elevation of the model. Now, steering with a pole, it is very easy just to tap the tail boom or the front of the model and change the elevation of the model if it's struggling. But again, it's very rare to see that. But that would be the answer.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We've got 2 from Bernard Guest. First is, what are the green things on the motors, and also what is the thickness of the motors? That was the picture that you put up on your slides.
Right. Okay. Well, the green things are what we call O-rings. I don't know whether you can see on there. It's whether it will focus.
Yeah, that comes through all right.
There are 2 little rings on there, and those are what we wind with and what we hook the motor used to hook onto the model itself. The green ones were actually it's welding gas line. So if you're welding in a garage or whatever, it's the gas line that serves the welding equipment, and we cut them with a razor blade and use those as O-rings. And yes, we weigh every one of them for F1D because they can weigh an awful lot of. Very heavy. They can be very heavy, so we have to weigh them and ensure that they're the correct weight.
Okay, next one from Bernard. Is there a standard time that you guys hold the motor for during braking? For our F1B motors, we stretch and hold for only a few seconds and call that good.
Yeah. So what I was taught by Bob Bailey, and I've always stuck to this in terms of the way I test motors, albeit I bench test them now. So I tend to test things before we go flying. But if I had a virgin motor in the hangar that we're flying in, I would stretch the motor to 8 or 10 times its length. I would probably put on around about 30% of the turns at that point, and I would stand for 2 minutes with it stretched. Then I would gently unwind it. I would allow it to rest for an hour, and then I would fly it. If I was in the workshop, I would do a similar thing, but I stretch test them. I stretch them rather than actually torque them, so I don't put turns on. And I will stretch them for 2 or 3 minutes, and I'll do that twice. The best, I think it's widely known that the third wind of a rubber motor, or certainly of Tan2 rubber, most of the Tan2 rubber is the best wind, that you get the best performance and the most energy on it. And if you do the testing, it tends to test that way as well.
Hey, thank you. We've got 24 open questions at the moment, plus
Right.
plus one in the chat. For those of you that are using the chat for questions, can you put them in the Q&A, please? Because we'll go through the Q&A first, then we'll go through the chat afterwards. So Ian Davis says, are there any resources available to make your own torque meter, please?
Yes, there are. You can go to the Aero Modeler. There's a number of Aero Modeler issues, but there is also the Indoor News and Views, which is a website with a huge amount of historic magazines throughout the years, and we can certainly. I think that, Tony, I think I'm correct. That's on the Indoor Duration website, isn't it? Indoor News and Views. The link.
Yeah, there's actually a little plan for the one I use, and it's sort of, I call it a non-engineered one, because it's made from normal materials, basically, bit of brass tube and a wire, and you calibrate it. It tells you how to calibrate it too, so you can easily make a torque meter. Not very difficult. It's just a wire that's twisted, basically. Getting the right size wire, I think there's a link to a calculation if you need it, but it tells you what thickness wire and the length of the wire to use too.
There we go.
If I put my 2 pence in on this, there's a website that I often use, which is the National Free Flight Society in the United States. They have a library, and I've just had a quick look. They've got a number of articles on torque meters. That advice does come with a health warning, because whenever I go onto their library, I'm normally stuck on it for about 2 hours before I can get off.
No, ditto. I love it. I love it. It's fantastic.
National Free Flight Society Library, and you should get that through Google. Right, Sean, is that Mileson or Millison? He says, is there any mainstream indoor sites in or close to Milton Keynes that are often used? Obviously not right now, but when restrictions lift.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, not exactly close to Milton Keynes, but we fly very occasionally at Towcester, but our main flying site is actually at Thames Valley Leisure Centre, which is not a million miles from Milton Keynes, really.
Okay, Mark Harris says, are you just using PVA to glue these together, or are you using any special glues? Also, what do you stick the film down with? And David Oakley says, what glue do you use? So you can do 2.
Right. Okay. So there are 2 commonly used glues. So Ambroid is one, which is still available, I believe, and Duco is the second one. They're both forms of balsa cement. As I said previously, you certainly want to dilute them at least 50%. Don't use them any stronger than that. There's no need to. It's often easier to build up 2 layers of 25 or 50% to get the glue to stiffness. Never use PVA. It's the worst thing you can use. Part and parcel of why we use balsa cement is you can actually soften it, and you can adjust your model and repair it, softening it by using cellulose thinners or acetone is the best way of degluing things. So if you break a rib, a little bit of acetone daubed on both ends, the rib just pops straight out, and you put another one straight back in. Not quite as easy as that, but essentially that's why we use it, and it dries stiff. It is a good glue. I have heard that one of the most recent world champions uses mostly super glue for his model, but super glue is incredibly heavy. However, he uses super glue. I've never tried it. I don't. I might use the tiniest amount on the front bearing, but other than that, no. Ambroid and Duco.
I'd agree. I will say that Ambroid
Yeah.
Ambroid factory stopped producing about 2 years ago.
Yeah, okay. There's still some available, and Hans has just pointed out that how we cover the wings. Second part of the question: how do we cover materials? We often use what we call spray mount. So a spray mount glue, a spray adhesive, sprayed at around about 2 feet distance above. Very very light dusting on the airframe, and then the film that we use goes on a frame itself. So it's taut on a frame, and then we lower that onto the covered airframe, and then you put the dihedral in afterwards if it's a wing. But yeah, photo mount, spray mount, 3M glue, they're all much of a muchness. Some are permanent, some of them you can release. They're slightly more flexible, but
Right,
that's the easy answer.
31 questions left, Mark.
Right, we'll go quicker then.
From Mark Aris and Bernard Guest. 2 questions here. With a variable pitch prop, are you selecting the pitch before flight, or is it reacting to the torque of the motor in flight? Bernard says, what is the angle of the pitch change from max to min?
Tony, do you want to do that one?
Thank you, Mark. Well, the answer is it varies how high you want to fly. Yes, the prop does change in response to the torque that you're applying to it. So normally you would fly with a full torque launch, and therefore it would change from the maximum torque that you'd set the prop to down to the minimum cruise torque that you're going to fly at. And pitch change could be as much as 20 degrees, but it could be as little as 5 degrees. Depends where you're flying. If you need to keep it very low, you'd have a very big pitch change. If you want to fly quite high, then you'd have less of a pitch change.
I know Bernard very well, and he flies F1B. The one big difference that we have between an F1D and an F1B is that we have the ability to be able to adjust the tension of the spring that releases the torque. Now, an F1B model is pretty much fixed. Most of us use the same fixed spring in that, but we have the ability to adjust the torsion of the spring, which allows us to release the torque differently. So it has another mechanism. So it is quite an advanced mechanism. So I think we'll probably best leave that one there, because I know there's another 30 questions to come. But we could talk about propellers all night. So
okay, next one from Manuel Angel Dyers. What do you use for rubber lube?
Silicon. Silicon liquid I normally use, I purchase it from a company in East Anglia who produce it. It's usually used for equipment such as rowing machines and stuff that use pneumatics. They use a lot of the silicon in pneumatics. You can buy different viscosities. So I use a very, very thin viscosity silicon for my motor, for my general motor use. But when I tie the knots in the motor, I use a very, very viscous one, because I don't want to cover the whole motor in it. I just want to be able to control that for the knot. If you have too much silicon on, try tying knots with lots of silicon. It's a horrible mess. And then, so that's really, but there's dozens of it. Again, go onto eBay, you can buy a litre of it for, about 10, 15 pounds, $20, something like that.
Okay, from Luke Guymore. Hi, Mark. Thanks for your talk. Excellent. Forgive my ignorance. What's the difference between microfilm and OS film? I seem to remember that when I was a kid, people talked about these models being covered in microfilm. It all seemed very esoteric. Yeah,
Luke's a former Peterborough Model Flying Club member. Yeah, Luke, the difference is that OS film is a plastic. I believe it was made by DuPont as a semiconductor, an insulator. Microfilm is a chemical that is laid over water to form a film. It's a series of chemicals that form a film, and then they're lifted off. So it is a completely different type of material. The OS film that we use is actually very robust, whereas microfilm, albeit I've never actually made microfilm, I started after microfilm. I've seen it and I have touched it and I've destroyed it. It is incredibly sensitive. You just don't get your fingers on it, basically. Yeah, there's a few articles that go on about it, and it's a wonderful material. It's beautiful to see, but it's a lot lighter, a lot thinner. But it is incredibly difficult to handle.
Okay, we're down to 25 now. James writes, you mentioned there is one part you can buy. Is it the variable pitch hub? Also, what thickness is a typical F1D motor?
Right. Yes, the one component that is made up of more than one component in itself is the VP propeller, the VP hub itself, not the propeller, just the hub unit itself. And that has been it's more or less commonly accepted that that is something that one can purchase as a single component, albeit it's made up of probably 15 or 20 separate components. And it is the only part of the F1D apart from the bearing at the front, but that's made out of one single piece of metal. So I don't really class that the same. And rubber motors, well, rubber motors commonly are around about anywhere between 35 and 48 thou, depending on whether you're flying a fixed pitch propeller or a variable pitch propeller. Again, it can vary, but with our old rules models, we used to fly 48 to 50 thou or 55 thou rubber. We're flying a lot thinner rubber now, but we don't fly it by thickness, we fly by weight, so I can't really be too precise to Jim on that. But I can talk to Jim later, because I always talk to Jim. So,
thanks, Mark. So from Chuck Andreka, how do you get your glues around the world? How do you ship them?
Like that.
Probably best don't admit to that, actually.
They're into it, yeah.
Yeah, they go in the suitcase. So they go in sealed containers. I buy new containers every time I go. I seal them down, fill them all up, seal that down, put it in my suitcase, and it goes in on the plane. I've never been stopped. There's always a first, I guess, but we've always done that. They're in tiny little quantities.
I was going to say it's a tiny amount. I mean, it's a couple of cc's, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to you about this off screen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Right, David Gallier. Mark, how do you get started in free flight duration?
How do you get started in it? That's a real easy question and a really easy answer. What you do is you come and join us and fly with us. And if you are really keen, we have the opportunity of mentoring those who are incredibly keen. Hans, who sits in the room with us at the moment, was mentored by Tony. Martin, who you saw earlier, I mentored Martin, and they've both represented Britain. They both won medals for Britain, and that was in a relatively short space of time. Sort of, Hans, what you've been flying, 7 years now, 8 years?
Yeah, probably about 6, 7 years.
Maybe. 6, 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So mentoring is by far, if you want to be competitive, we will, with the BMFA, we will set up a mentoring scheme, and we will make sure that we can guide people through it. It's the best way. But come and fly with us and learn. And the guys and girls who fly with us are just fantastic. Everybody helps. We're all friendly. Nobody bites. Come and join us.
And you certainly don't have to start with an F1D.
No.
There's some brilliant starter models. Brilliant.
Okay, thank you. Kevin Caton, how do you transport your models by air, e.g. to the USA? Do you trust the transport boxes to the baggage handlers, or do you take them to
Right.
Only Mark does that.
The key to it is having a translucent panel, because when you go through customs, and security, what they want to do is look at what you're actually taking with you. If they can see what's in there, that's the best way. The last thing you want, and we've had to do it a few times, is to open the case up in security. That's the last thing we want to do. Our models, they put the hand in straight away and destroy it. I mean, that's what we do. So everybody,
hand baggage, does it, Mark?
It's hand baggage, so that goes overhead. So we literally design it within a millimetre of its size. I've had it stopped once, and mine had to go on in cargo, and I think I only had air pressure problems with a couple of tailplanes. I lost the film covering on them due to air pressure, because I didn't have any. It was airtight. My container was. So when it depressurized, it obviously lifted the film off. But there we go. But all good otherwise. And I think we got a bronze medal that day. So that competition. So we didn't do too bad.
Okay, I said I'd remind you at 2025. It's 2026. You've answered 23, and you've got 19 to go. So,
Right.
Martin Dilly, have you any copies of the US-produced film Float reached here yet? From short clips, it looks like the indoor equivalent of 180 is max, and surely worth the indoor TC getting a copy to promote indoor.
Yeah, I mean, I personally got it. I was involved from the start, and I put some sponsorship money into it, along with a lot of people who set the float story off. It is commonly available. Yeah, it's fantastic. You know, it's just worth people watching it, really. And but yeah, we can certainly get some copies of it, and we can have a word with Ben and Phil over in the States, and see if we can run it at the National Centre. You know, when we've got an open day there or something like that. See if they'll allow us to run that. But I can have a word with the guys over in the States on that.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And from Dylan Roberts, Mark, could you explain? I'm smiling here because this might not take you. It might take you a little bit longer than normal. Mark, could you explain the stretching process of the rubber in detail? I stretch it out and begin winding. Is this correct?
Dylan, you know where I am. Give me a shout after this, and we'll go through it. It's not something for yeah. We just haven't got time to go through this. There are lots of different methods. Yeah, but I'm more than happy. I know Dylan, and he's got my details. So.
You could do a whole talk on that, couldn't you?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
From Alan Coppen, where do you source your Bolsa, particularly at this time of world Bolsa shortage?
Right, something I prepared earlier just for amusement. So that's just one of my Bolsa boxes. I cut it all myself is the answer. I put a machine together and invested on a machine where I cut my own balsa wood, because it was very difficult to obtain balsa wood. Buying balsa wood itself, you know, you scrounge it, you purchase it from all around the world wherever you can when you need it. But cutting it down to the correct thicknesses is what it's really all about. You know, and there are a few suppliers, and I've mentioned before Nick Aikman of Green Man Balsa. He's based in the UK, and certainly I'm sure he'll. You know, I think he's actually on tonight, and he'll certainly be able to assist in terms of purchasing balsa wood.
Okay, from Terry Rigdon, I noticed the tail on your model has an underslung tail plane. Why not attach it direct to the stick?
Two reasons. One is that's how we trim. So I know we're tight of time. This is an old model, so forget the floppiness on it. It's but basically we can actually move, because there's a little small tissue tube on there. We can elevate either way, so we can change the trim of that. It's also to get the tail plane out of some of the propeller wash. This was just the design at the time. We don't fix to the tail boom just because we want as much adjustment as we can get, really. You know, I guess it's just the way it is. We've not really. I don't think we've ever fixed it to a tail boom, but we have had shorter posts that we connect to. But there's no other reasons than that, really.
Okay, Dave Jens, hi. Which gives you the greater thrill, F1D or F1B?
Different thrills. Different thrills. I love flying outdoors, and I love the challenge of indoors. Indoor building my own models is the greatest joy, but flying outdoors in the open air, I guess, is another joy. I'm not a huge fan of flying inside a building. I'll be honest with you. I fly in a building because I have to fly inside the building because I want to fly the models. So it's a bit. I'd much rather fly outdoors. I think outdoor flying is. I prefer that. But the contests and building indoor duration models is fabulous. It's so I think they're equal. I mean, they're equal. I'm not going to. Yeah, I can't split them, really.
Okay, Peter Martin, great talk. Thanks, Mark. In outdoor free flight, we saw a step increase in performance going from Bolsa to carbon airframes due to the incredible stiffness against weight, giving efficient airframes. You mentioned stiff Bolsa, so why has no one tried carbon airframes for indoors?
They have. The answer is they have. The weight of carbon is massively heavier. It's far more dense than balsa wood. Yes, you can use it. They do use it. It's very fragile, is one of the things. Interestingly, Hans will Hans will vouch for me taking out the world champions model with my solid Bolsa model, which weighed exactly the same as his. I literally bumped into it, and his just literally fell to bits. And his is a carbon outline wing with all carbon ribs. It's as stiff as old boots, but it is incredibly fragile. It's then brittle. But saying that, yes, we use boron, we use carbon fibre to reinforce a lot of the components. The talk has really been about the simplicity of models. So I didn't really want to go too much into carbon fibre and boron, but yeah, I mean, they do. You can make any outlines you want nowadays. So, again, good question.
I think the important thing is that non-carbon models are still as competitive as carbon models. They certainly haven't been overtaken in indoor.
Yeah, very true.
Okay, Philip Howell says, can the fuselage be hollow or are they always solid?
On an F1D, they are hollow, and on other classes, they are solid. It varies. There are class restrictions that determine the fuselage, and then some of the models in F1D you couldn't build it solid because it'd be too heavy. So whilst there's no restriction, you could build a solid. You just can't build it to the weight. It would weigh more than the model twice over. So, but a tube is and it's quite good fun. Tubes are fun to make.
Okay, Mike Phantom says, is the O-ring included in the motor weight?
No, is the answer. It's not part of the motor weight. It is. I think that's right. Is it? Sorry, I can't remember now.
Yeah, it's right. It's not
part of the weight
either.
The isse that we have at championships is that we have the O-rings on, and we don't want to be making up motors at the time. So they give us an allowance for the O-rings, and then should you have an improved flight, then you will likely have to cut the O-rings off and weigh the raw motor. What I can tell you is, which is a wonderful piece of information for those who don't fly duration, the motor weight, the rubber motor loses weight after a flight. Now, if you can imagine a square piece of rubber, it's been cut. Once it's been wound really hard, the little arises, the little corners of all the rubber tend to fray off and burn off, and the weight goes down. Some of the silicon comes off. So we get the motors incredibly close to the maximum weight that we're allowed, knowing full well they're already going to lose a little bit of weight. But the O-rings can be contentious. It's another one of those questions of some people can try and cheat on the O-rings, but ultimately you'll get caught out because if your duration goes up, you can be challenged on it. So.
Okay, two questions very similar here. Forgive my pronunciation. It's Anestus Dombrauskas.
Yeah, we know Anestus. Yes.
Okay, and he says how many more turns in rubber, and John Leach says how many turns on the prop. I assume they're the same because you don't use a gearbox, do you?
Right, turns for a full motor. Right, Tony, you have to remind me. It's been about a year since we've been flying.
Maximum 1350, 1400 probably.
Yeah,
depends on the thickness of the rubber you're using, clearly. Yeah,
and the type of propeller, but 13, 1400 is a common sort of number, but it will vary. Every site's different. Every condition's different. So, and that box there, full of motors, has got it's around about 15 different lengths of motor. So they'll all have different turns on them. So part of what we do.
Okay, you're down to your last 8. James Wright, what is the covering material used today for Easy B models? When I flew them, it was condenser paper, and I still have some. Right.
Okay. So the majority of us cover in OS film because it's available. Polymicro is still available. I think there are some people I think still have that, but essentially yes. I mean, use that, or you could use condenser paper. It's not a huge problem. But OS, I think, and penny plane plastic, I think, is another one.
Yeah.
So it's another slightly thicker version of OS film. They're all plastic semiconductor films.
Okay, Jeff Chappell says, hello, please can you share how you make dihedral joints for the wings? Mine are always a mess.
That's
going to identify with that as well.
I think that one on these models, the point is with this, you cover them flat. So for anybody who doesn't realize, you cover the wing flat and you put the dihedral in whilst the wings are covered. So what I tend to do is I prepare everything before. I'll try and keep this very quick because we're running out of time. But I tend to cut all my dihedral angles first, so they're in there. And I put a very small slither of tissue, top and bottom of the spar, and I put that on with ambroid so that the wing is relatively stiff. Then I cover it. Then I can elevate it. I put a little bit of release on there, and I can then start to bend the dihedral up. And then I just put a little brace on the front and the back of the dihedral joint. So you do put a brace, and that brace is proud front and back. What I then do is, and the important bit is what your center rib, you have all this flopping around film. So what you do is you use a brush. You can get a nice boiled sweet, get a little bit of sugar on your tongue, and use a nice brush, and you run it through along the dihedral joint, and the film picks up on that, and it tightens the film up. The film is and that's all you need. A little bit of sugar and spittle is enough just to pull the film in, and you get a pretty tidy joint on that. But you just do it very, very gently, very carefully. But again, that's one for some diagrams. I think for another chat, we can do that on another chat.
Right, Peter Martin, this is one that's close to my heart, actually. The Reynolds number must be super low for indoor aircraft. Any ideas how that affects the aerodynamics, choice of airfoil section, and so on?
Yeah, Peter, I think, again, we'll have a chat offline on this one. It's the Reynolds numbers are incredibly low. In fact, the majority of the time, I think everybody's purely guessing what they are. I don't think any testing has really been done on this. In terms of airfoil sections, just to answer your question, I've tried 2 or 3 different airfoil sections. I can't tell you whether there's any difference between one from the other. I think these are flying well outside of normal conditions. They're flying so slow, and they have so many other things that are affecting them. I would like to talk about that with you. I know you're very much into that, and I know you've been doing some data analysis on airfoils as well, and flight characteristics. I've certainly got some data, and I can run that past you.
Okay, Tony Fryer, you talk about rubber, but are there any synthetic options, and would they avoid some of the issues associated with rubber?
I'm not aware of any synthetic options. I've seen some of the silicon rubbers. I've tried testing them myself, and they're just rubbish. The best rubber is pure gum rubber. I did some analysis way back when I started to understand what rubber was made. The best rubber that we use, which is the Tan2 rubber, the old rubber, or even Super Sport nowadays, and it's 99.6% pure gum rubber with a very small amount of chemical added to it. It is nearly pure natural rubber. So I've not seen anything synthetic. That's not to say there isn't anything out there, but yeah, not come across it at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Bernard Bruins, flying in low ceiling halls, would you advise to start with a simple F1D, no VP maybe, a bit overweight, or try to go for the full setup? So with a VP, etc.
No, absolutely. I nearly put one of my first model on, which was a very, very simple F1D, fixed pitch propeller. If it's 20, 30, 40, even 50 milligrams overweight, don't worry about it. Really not important. Model wants to be stiff. It wants to be simple. Build it stiff and simple. Learn to fly. There are far more issues about winding rubber, getting the pitch of the propeller. There's an awful lot to learn than worrying about whether a propeller is, or the model's not stiff enough, or, and that's why I said in one of my tips earlier, really build stiff models. Select your balsa wood, build them as stiff as you can. They will just fly, and you'll get fun out of it. But there's nothing worse than building a model, taking it out the box first time, and the boom droops all over the place, and it twists, and it doesn't fly. You spent all that time. Build it stiff, enjoy flying it.
Okay, thank you. From Sean, is it Marson or Milson? Is there a way to know where there is a gathering meeting, like a WhatsApp group or Facebook page? I know there are calendars in the back of magazines, but I'd like to know in real time.
Yeah, well, indoor duration, obviously, we do publish all of the venues that we fly at, and they should be on the BMFA contest events calendar. COVID has put pay to a lot of it, because it's limited the number of people that could go flying indoors during last year. And I know that the guys went out, and there was probably 1 or 2 of them went together. I think it was just in pairs, just to be COVID secure. But I think certainly as soon as we open up this year, everything will be on the contest events calendar, and also contact the committee, the technical committee. You've got two guys, Hans and Tony here. Contact them, and they also have distribution list for the duration flyers as well for some short notice flying. So.
Okay, thank you. Another one from Manuel and Angel Diaz. Apologies if it's an obvious question. The traditional wood construction is apparently being replaced by sandwich carbon balsa carbon construction, which is similar to the previous answer. Do you think the future will follow this trend? And a specific question, what do you use to give a sandwich rib with a balsa spar, or the sandwich ribs with the carbon outlines of propellers? So I'm assuming he's asking about adhesives there.
Yeah, I think who knows where it will go. I think everybody plays with carbon fiber. Everybody plays with the new technologies. There are certain instances where carbon can assist you. Other instances, as Tony quite rightly said, balsa wood is just as good. It's slightly more difficult to source the best type of balsa wood. You can make it as simple or as complex as you like. Personally, I quite like carbon sandwich with balsa in between. I've built all different types of models, tried them, but yeah, I mean, it's probably Hobson's choice. You know, you've only got 1.4 grams to play with, and it comes down to weight, and you'll soon find out that using carbon fiber makes it incredibly difficult. Balsa's easy compared with.
Okay, we're down to the last three, but there's a bit I'm going to add on the end. So Philip Howell says, what is the lightest flexible solar panel, and could this be used? Smiley face.
No.
Smiley face.
Right, two to go. No. No, I mean, we're talking about 1.4 grams, you know, and less for some of the smaller models. I'm not aware of anything at the moment that's
okay. Bernard Bruin says, yeah, when building my first model, where should my focus be strength wise? So which parts need to be the most stiff?
The answer is the tail boom, I think, is number one, and then I would follow with the wings.
Okay. There is one last question which I'm going to leave for the moment. There's two things I'd like to pick out of the chat window. One is that just coming back to try and find it. Chuck Andraka has put down Ray Harlan's website for those who would like to access it. That's in the chat. And also an interesting one, he's also put indoor free flight. Dave Lindley has a new glue, big N, little I, big C, little E. I don't know how that's pronounced. Nice, is it? And is made to best simulate the old Ambroid.
Fantastic.
Great.
Yeah, so that's excellent stuff.
Love
Final question
let's give it a try.
From Mark Aris. He says, Mark, where'd you get the T-shirt?
Right, Romania. You have to go to a championships to get the T-shirt. It was the...
So you've been there and you've got the T-shirt?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was the Otto Hids back in 2016. So yeah, it was the Open International prior to the World or Europeans. I can't remember now. I lose track.
Well, that was absolutely brilliant. You've answered.
Can I have another drink?
47 questions in about 35 minutes. I think that's got to be a record.
Some type of record.
So well done. Thank you very much indeed. I think we ought to give him a big hand, actually.
Well done, Mark.
No, well, thank you, everybody. You know,
shall I let you close down then, Mark, and then?
Yeah, I mean, we have run out of time. I wanted to get a couple of other guys on, but I think, you know, I know Josh Finn is in the background there listening, and Nick Aikman, I believe, is there as well as a couple of others. You know, for anybody who wants to take up duration, you know, get in contact. We're all a friendly bunch. I mean, in the air tonight, if it's told me anything, is that we all want to help each other. It's all about model flying, and it's all about promoting model flying, and the BMFA does that wonderfully well. So, you know, get in contact with us. You've got plenty of contact details there, and you know, we'll help as best that we can. You know, a lot of us are very busy, and we can't spend all of our time, but there's always somebody who can help, and Hans is testament to that. You know, he learnt an awful lot from Tony. You know, just please, you know, keep in contact with us all. You know, that's really what it's all about, and enjoy your model flying.